You want to come stand up?
Sure.
This over here. Right. Good evening, Mayor Althoff and members of the City Council. My name is Jessica Sade, and I am the Goodhue County Towards Zero Death, also known as TZD, Safe Roads Grant Coordinator. And with me tonight,
She's the smart side, I'm the experienced side. My name is Scott McConkie. I'm the law enforcement liaison for Southern Minnesota. I work for the Office of Traffic Safety. Formerly, I grew up in Wilmer. I worked for the Candy-Ojai County Sheriff's Office as a dispatcher, and I went to Fergus Falls as a police officer, then I became a trooper, and then I retired as a lieutenant out of Mankato, all to show that I just can't keep a job.
and then
Oh, you know me, Paul Larson, and I am one of the two officers in Cannon Falls that kind of helps spearhead the TZD through Cannon Falls.
awesome. So what is TZD? Minnesota TZD works to create a culture in which traffic, deaths, and serious injuries are no longer acceptable through the integrated application of the 4 E's: education, EMS, enforcement, and engineering. The program also uses data to target areas for improvement, employ proven countermeasures, implement best practices, and advance innovations in new technologies. When TZD began in 2003, there was an increase in traffic-related fatalities on our roads. 655 people died on our roadway that year alone. In 2018, we saw 381 deaths on our road, and preliminary numbers for 2019 shows that we had 364 deaths on our road, which is a decrease of 44% in deaths since we began our work. I like finding these old pictures, and as you can see, we've come a long way. And we have done a lot of great work to drastically reduce traffic-related deaths, which we should be celebrating. However, in recent years, we have reached a plateau. So we need to continue to educate the public and change the way people view traffic safety. Why? Because 93% of the time, driver error is a contributing factor in crashes. This slide shows how factors such as the driver, roadway, and the vehicle are interconnected. Current traffic safety culture seems to be accepting that driving is just something that we're doing, when in reality, to get to zero, excuse me, we need everyone to realize the importance of safety over convenience.
I think this is where I'm supposed to jump in. Last time I was here, I can't remember, Chief, but I brought a radar. I was able to present a free, about a $3,500 radar to the PD, but I've learned from experience you have to be careful when you do that. This gentleman over here, he probably saw me go to me. His name captured me. My in-laws are Maroney's. My wife is a Maroney. It's the first time I've seen that name, but I happened to present the same type of radar to the city of Montevideo, and they live just outside of the city. And when all of a sudden your picture's in the paper and your mother-in-law finds out you didn't stop by to say hello. I was in the doghouse. And then even worse, a week later, my father-in-law got stopped for speeding, so that was my fault. But last time I was here, I dropped my wife off at the Medford Mall, and I had to talk very fast because the longer I talked, the more she was going to spend money. But I don't have that limitation today. I'm going to be talking about the enforcement E, and we're just one E that wants to integrate into a total package to try to help keep our communities safer. We do that several ways, but before we go there, through my years as a peace officer and as a law enforcement liaison, I've had opportunity to speak to high school groups a number of times. And I ask them some questions, and sometimes it sparks some pretty deep emotions, but I'll ask for a show of hands. How many know somebody that's been maybe killed in a school shooting, a drive-by shooting, been killed by a drug-related incident or any other deal? And I get some hands. But then when I ask how many know somebody personally who has died in a crash, almost 1/3, yes, and there's hands, to 1/2 of the students raise their hands. And so that tells me, I'm not a big stats guy, but that tells me that's a big deal. And we know that that's one of the #1 killers of our youth. So what we have in common here together as elected officials and myself as a previous sworn officer and as Officer Larson, we all took an oath to do all we could to protect those we serve. We're public servants. And why we're here today is not to tell you how we're going to do that. It's to share some options, and then there's choices to be made. But in the enforcement it's kind of like being the parent. We hope we don't get to that point where we have to be the accountability. But you know, if you keep telling your kids, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, but there's no accountability, they're going to do that. So we're kind of the last resort. But we're hoping by integrating all we do as a package, it changes behavior. And as Jessica has shown that we were going up and then down, that's happened on a national level too, because they have found when we take the most common violations that are contributing to death and serious injury and package them together with enforcement, with education, with the media, it has an impact on people that helps change behavior. And we use enforcement we call high visibility. We want people to see the squad cars. And then when they see the squad car and they might even make a traffic stop, all of a sudden they're going, I just saw that commercial, I saw that billboard. I better behave, I better not text on my phone. We might not have stopped it for it, but that's a perception. One example was my tax man. He said, one year, Scott, I finally started wearing my seatbelt. I said, Gary, what caused you to do that? He said, well, first of all, my girlfriend. I said, what were the consequences if you didn't? He says, I'm not going to tell you. But the other was, at that time I was a lieutenant with the State Patrol, and we were doing multi-agency saturations. And even as a police officer, I bucked against it. They were saying, why don't you try it? Why don't you try it? Well, we finally went down on Riverfront, posted a squad, or a officer on the corner who was watching for people not wearing seatbelt, and then we had squads waiting. Well, he heard about that, and he said, I know if I don't buckle up, my day's going to come, I'm going to get a ticket. What happened is Gary never got a ticket, but he changed his behavior. And that's kind of our goal, that by working as a group, we can change those behaviors and impact people's lives. Now, another thing that works in this, you're very concerned, and obviously so, because you want to be here to protect your citizens and make sure they're safe, and traffic is one of those areas. But I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure people in Cannon Falls travel outside the city limits. So my guess is there's a hope that there's people in other communities that are doing the same, and that's our desire. And Cannon Falls has had a long history of participating in these events. And my partner once talked to a city up north and said he really didn't want to participate. And again, that's their choice. But he explained to him, but you know, there's communities all over the state doing this. So when they leave your town, they know they're going to have the best odds for safety and traveling. Don't you think you have an obligation to do that for others coming here? He goes, yeah, now it makes sense. And that was a cop-to-cop discussion too. So that's one of the things that's been happening here as well. Goodhue County has probably, I've been doing this for 9 years. I've been retired as a cop for 9 years. I know my youthful appearance kind of disguises that. But right away, Goodhue caught my attention because they have a very cohesive group of working together to try to have that impact, not just here, but throughout the county. And then as people travel through your various main routes to help keep it safe. Now, and I want to make it very clear, if you have any questions, please ask, because you have every right and an obligation to ask. If you have questions about if we're going to be involved in this, we want to know this, so please ask those questions. But one thing, if you notice, I like to use humor. In some ways, it's probably to cover up a lot of hurt. I've developed that over the years because as a cop for 33 years, I saw a lot that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And there was nights I would come home, and I've forgotten how bad it feels, but it's some of those, not kind of, they still haunt me to this day. But I remember going home many times thinking I couldn't feel any worse than I do. And I would sometimes even weep for days because the experiences I had to see and the things I had to tell people and what I had to deal with. And when I think of all that, the goal here is not to have a program. The goal here is to save lives. And then we select programs that has the best impact. And that's why we work with Jessica and all the E's to do that. We're just the one E in the corner doing that. So, and there's one other thing that they have done here, and you might have questions about that too, but sometimes they move throughout the county and a select group will work that area. So when we look at all our enforcement priorities, believe it or not, law enforcement has a lot on their plate. They have a lot of top priorities. But from what I explained, I think we all agree traffic safety and the safety of our community is one of them. So their resources are minimal and probably more, and it's not a requirement, but Goodhue County has used this compact agreement where they can move around and do this type of enforcement. Now, if you have questions about that, please ask. Not everybody does it, some do. And they have found whatever helps the best, but what I try to compare it to is like having a drug task force. Another one of those priorities of our safety in our community, but not enough resources, so we share those resources and they move around within the county or within the task force to help accomplish that. So that's one of the things they've done here. Another thing I've seen them do is over the years, the move over violations. Again, they worked as a group, and I've used Goodhue County as an example, how you can work together to help save those or make it safe that work on the road. Not just law enforcement, but your utility workers, EMS, fire, that are out on the highway working. So again, this is a total package. Enforcement is one corner, but we want to work with all the E's, and even more so, we want to work with local government officials so we can come together and see how can we best help each other to keep your community safe, and when your people leave your community, travel elsewhere. I was just thinking one more example when I first started, because with high visibility, the goal is kind of to have less tickets. The more they see the cops, the more they know what's going on, the more behavior you get. I remember when I first started, this is about 8 years ago, there was a DWI saturation where they targeted the Afton area. And the cops came to me and said, sorry Scott, we weren't very successful. We didn't arrest any drivers. I said, well, did you make some stops? So when we first got there, we stopped a few cars. Everybody knew we were there. 100% success. Because we had no crashes, we had no drunk drivers, we couldn't find one, couldn't buy one. And that's what we're looking for, that high visibility to prevention. But there's those people that, I'm going to admit, that everything doesn't work, so we are going to stop and deal with that as well. So I took one little slide, I talked a lot, but I just want to say I'm very passionate about this, and I love your city, I love the people. I've driven out of my way from Mankato City to drive through your town just because it's a beautiful town. One day I came through, you had music in the park playing, and I just pulled over and enjoyed that a little bit. I haven't been able to enjoy your winery, but that's on my wife's list too. So I enjoy your community. I thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
And then another way of working together, not only as a county, but as a region, is everybody should have received the Save the Date. On May 6th, Wednesday, May 6th, we are having our Southeast Minnesota Towards Zero Death workshop at the International Event Center in Rochester. So TZD also coordinates some safety activities throughout the county, and here are a few of the ones that we've done here in Cannon Falls, and we have a bunch of them coming up for the rest of the year as well. Another aspect of TZD that we do here locally is facilitate our Goodhue County Fatal and Serious Injury Crash Review Committee. The committee includes representatives from all 4 E's, and the purpose is to identify patterns that contributed to recent crashes and therefore the fatalities and serious injuries that occurred from those, so that we can determine specific actions that we can take as a coalition to help prevent similar crashes in the future. And with that, our goal is 0, and we need your help because 0 is attainable, but it takes all of us working together to achieve that. So thank you very much for your time today and allowing us to
It
speak.
kind of looks like a big crash.
It does, kind of.
I'm just saying.
I never thought of it
The
that
little
way.
fire truck I hid right over there.
With the law, no cell or hands-on,
Yep, the
are you
hands-free.
seeing it? I know I see all kinds of people still doing it, but has that helped a little bit in accidents?
There, I haven't seen the crash stats. I know when they implemented this in New York, and there was another state that our law was modeled after, their first year, they saw a 10% reduction in fatalities right away. So we're going after a model that we saw work. The other thing is, it doesn't necessarily stop all the distraction, but it gives law enforcement a tool to deal with it. Before, it was very difficult to make one of those citations stick. It's one of those violations. When you do stop somebody and you give them the ticket, they go, yeah, you're right, shouldn't have done it. We all agree, but we do it, and it's hard to put it down. So the law allows a one-touch to make a call. But if you pick it up in your hand, and I remember, we all make mistakes. My brother called, my wife was talking to him, well, here's your brother, talk to him, I'm driving. I go, through my phone. But it's that, again, that learned behavior, and it is going to have
But it
the
also
impact.
gives you a great excuse not to answer your phone.
Yes.
I can't,
yeah.
I'm driving.
Yep.
And August will be a year. So at that point, then we'll be able to tell a little bit within that. But August will be a year of that law.
And Morris, to go to your question, what we've seen, I've seen pulling people over for it, right away initially, right after law came out, no one was using their phone. But now people I pull over, it's kind of the same thing. It's, I totally forgot. Or that emergency aspect, to them it's emergency, but for the statute, it's call 911. Someone's like, I just had to get a hold of my sister really quick. Well, that's not an emergency.
Yeah, right.
But I think those stops, and then with the Department of Public Safety, more advertising, reminding people, hey, remember, this is still a law.
You still got people not using their seatbelts. And how long has that been?
What's the fine
Yeah.
for?
9.
Believe it or not, we got people still speeding, and we've been working.
I know.
Yeah.
I believe the first fine is something like $75 and then additional courts charges, but the next one's like $350. So they really hammered that second time.
How many do you see around town here?
I would say within a week, we maybe stop 3 to 5. A lot of time now we're getting people who are driving and texting and kind of doing this when it was legal. Now it's
Oh, God, it's
Yes, and
worse.
so it's worse in a way too,
Worse.
but and then as law enforcement, it's a little harder for us to, they're just looking down and say, oh no, I was looking at something else. And it can be a little harder for us to prove.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you what I'm passionate about. Okay, maybe you figured I'm old. But when I just met Paul, I've been talking with him, but when I see you have officers like this with this type of dedication and passion for what they do, and I think your chief's getting old too. I'm not sure. I've known you for a while. But when we see young people like this coming along, it just thrills me to see this as kind of people that are serving our community.
Yep.
Any more questions?
Questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And if any questions ever do come up, don't hesitate. You can get my email from the chief or Paul, or, be more than glad to come back. Or I just live over by St. Clair and Mankato. It's not too far. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.